Sometimes in the world of mechanical engineering, we need to use 3D CAD to create fully refined, realistic versions of what the parts are going to look like in production. But sometimes we just want to say, let me take 20 minutes and go from a napkin sketch to a 3D prototype that I can move the parts in, that I can test interference and rotation, and that I could even maybe 3D print so that I've got a physical prototype that I can test. Well, in today's Onshape step-by-step tutorial, I'm going to share with you my process of going from a napkin sketch or an idea in my head to a fully articulating robot arm here with multiple segments so that I can test things like interference and movement. And along the way, hopefully, I'll be able to share with you some of my favorite tips and tricks from the world of Onshape. So if that sounds good to you, be sure to hit the like button on this video, and let's get into it here by beginning a new document. So I'm going to say create document, and I'm going to call this robot arm, and I'm going to choose create. And then the first thing that I'm going to do here is go into this menu, and I'm going to choose to set my workspace units, and we're going to set our length unit to millimeters. And that way, all of you can join me in this journey. You can construct your sketches with me, you can build your assembly with me, and hopefully you'll learn a lot of great Onshape time-saving tips and tricks. So we're going to set our units to millimeters here. We're going to hit the green check mark. And let me bring up my keyboard cam here so you can see all of the cool keyboard shortcuts that I use. And one of my favorite keyboard shortcuts is the letter S. So whenever it comes to beginning a new sketch, what I do is I pick the plane, I press the letter S to bring up that S key menu, and then I choose this first icon here, New Sketch. And now I'm going to press the letter N on my keyboard, which rotates my view normal to. Now, the very first sketch geometry that I create is going to be the geometry that we use for this component here, this kind of light blue base component in our assembly. So I'm going to press the letter S. I'm going to jump into the line command. I'm going to single click here on the origin, and I'm going to move my mouse over and then single click again and let go of my mouse. And this lets me type in the length of that line, which is going to be 60 millimeters. This is what we call auto dimensioning in Onshape, and it's a great way to save time when you're constructing sketch geometry. So 60 millimeters, move my mouse up here. 40 millimeters, move my mouse straight over. 10 millimeters, move my mouse down. You got a single click before this box comes up. 10 millimeters, and then I'm going to move my mouse over here and then move my mouse back down to the origin. And that gives me the geometry that I can revolve or rotate around a center line to leave me with this blue shape, this kind of base of our assembly. But what we're going to do is in the same very first sketch here, it's called sketch 1, this very first sketch here, what we're going to do is we're going to construct the geometry for this kind of darker gray component, the geometry for this darker blue link, this lighter colored part here that couples into the clamp and the clamp itself. We're going to create all that geometry as layout geometry right here in sketch 1. And this is a very common technique we use when we're trying to create a rapid virtual prototype or a rapid assembly from just a napkin sketch or just a basic idea. We'll have time later to go in and refine the design, but for now, we're just trying to quickly get our idea out into 3D space so that we can test movement and interferences. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to create a line here that represents the height of that darker gray part. So S key line. I'm going to single click here at this end point. Single click, move my mouse. I'm going to press the letter Q on my keyboard. That changes that line from solid to construction. Q back to solid, Q back to construction. We're going to make this a construction line, vertical, and we'll single click in the background and type in 120, 120, enter. We're going to move our mouse up a little bit further, single left click, and we're going to type in 80, enter, and we're going to move our mouse up again, single click, 80, enter. And so you can hit escape here. You can see that we could move these dimensions off to the right here, make it a little easier to see our sketch. That's what your sketch should look like so far. So now let's add some circles. So S key, circle. I love the S key. I use the S key all the time. So S key, circle, and we're going to create a circle right here, right between the 80 and the 80 dimension, and that circle is going to have a diameter of 25. Enter, and then we're going to create another circle here, but it's not going to be on this point. It's going to be a little bit below this point. So we're going to draw a circle down here. So we single click, move our mouse, single click again, and that circle is going to have a diameter of 25 millimeters. And then you can press the S key and jump into your dimension command. And we're going to make a dimension here that goes from this point down to this point of the circle. And that dimension is going to be 20 millimeters. So that gives us the geometry for the two holes that are in this kind of dark blue part here. Let's create the perimeter of that dark blue part. Now, we could do this using a slot command in Onshape, but instead I'm going to use the line arc line workflow just because it gives me the chance to teach you some more shortcuts here in sketch mode. So I'm going to press the S key, jump into the line command. I'm going to start out here kind of up and to the left of this point. So left click, move my mouse down here, going to go a little bit below this other point, left click, move my mouse away. And now without clicking anything, I'm going to put my mouse over this end point and then move away again. And you can see here that that auto transitions you into a tangent arc. And that is a fantastic shortcut in Onshape. So I'm going to move this arc over here so that I'm horizontal to the starting point. Single left click, move my mouse up here. Now I want to get horizontal to this point over here as well. But you'll notice that when I move my mouse up and down, that point is not waking up, or that horizontal is not waking up. And this is a great pro tip for all Onshape users. If I take my mouse here and I just put it over that point and then move my mouse over, now it kind of wakes up that point to become part of that sketch relationship. So now you see I can left click and get that horizontal relationship. And now once again, I can take my mouse, move it away, move it back over that endpoint, and move it back away again to get a tangent arc. So that should give you that overall perimeter of that dark blue part. And now all we need to do is just add some relationships and a dimension. So we can hit escape here so that we're not in any commands. We can single click this point, single click this point. We can press the letter I on our keyboard. That moves those 2 points together. See, I is coincident, I. So we'll do the same thing down here. Single click this point, single click this point, press the letter I. That moves those 2 points together. And now S key dimension, and we'll make a dimension here that goes from this line to this line at 70 millimeters. So that gives you all the geometry for that blue link part, that dark blue link part. And now we're going to move on and create the geometry for the clamp. So let me move up top here. I'm just going to kind of zoom out and move up top here. And to create the geometry for that clamp, what we're going to use are center point rectangles. So you see here in the rectangle command, you've got corner and then you've got center point rectangle. We'll choose that center point rectangle. We'll click right here at this end point of the 80 millimeter line, single click, move our mouse, single click again. And for a rectangle, you're going to enter 2 dimensions when you auto dimension. 10, so 1, 0, enter, and 30, 30, enter. And now we're going to create a second rectangle up above here. So directly above the center of the sketch, we're going to single click. We're going to move our mouse. And now we want to wake up this corner point. Again, you can see that we're not getting that relationship to the corner point. So we just take our mouse and put it over that corner point and then move over again. And now you see we can get that horizontal relationship. So for that rectangle, we're going to single click and then we're going to type in 50, 50, enter, and we're going to type in 75, enter. And now to finish off this geometry, we're going to create 3 lines. So S key line, and we're going to create these 3 lines here. 1, 2, 3 lines here. And now we're going to S key and jump into the dimension command, and we're going to dimension here from this line to this line, 10 millimeters, from this line to this line, 10 millimeters, and from this line to this line, 10 millimeters. And so that is the geometry for that starting sketch. If you want to take a moment, maybe just pause the video and make sure that you've got your sketch looking the same as mine, nice and fully constrained. And that also brings us to about halfway through this tutorial. So if you like what you're seeing so far, be sure to hit the like button on this video. And if you have any questions or comments, feel free to leave them down below in the comments section. So with that, we're going to hit the green check mark here for sketch 1. That's going to exit sketch 1. And we are going to begin turning this geometry into solid geometry. And we'll start out here by hitting this icon, the revolve icon. We're going to say revolve. And then what are we going to revolve? We're going to revolve this shape down here, that light blue base of our assembly. And then we'll click in this red box that says Revolve Axis, and we'll click on this line here, this vertical line down at the bottom. And if you rotate the view a bit, you'll see that there you go, you have revolved that shape. So that's a great start to this assembly. Let's hit the green check mark. Now, of course, we're not in an assembly yet. We're still in a PartStudio, but we are able to create multiple parts in this PartStudio. So to create our second part, this kind of dark gray part that we see up here, this dark gray part, we're going to do an extrusion. So let's show sketch one. Show sketch one, that's our layout sketch. And then let's click on this face down here, the face of that original revolved feature. And one of my favorite things about Onshape is that we can extrude directly from that face. We don't have to create a new sketch. Now, currently what's happening with this extrude is that it is extruding and merging. These two are merging together. Revolve 1 and Extrude 1 are merging together. We're going to choose this option here that says New. And once we choose that, now we see that we have two different parts down here in the PartStudio. We see that Onshape automatically changed the color of that part to dark gray. So this is awesome. So now we're creating a second part, and we're going to say that the end type for this extrusion, the end type is going to be Up To Vertex. Up To Vertex, and the vertex we're going to pick is going to be right here in our layout sketch, that point that we created for the max height of that gray part. So we're going to hit the green check mark, and that creates a new part in our PartStudio, and that creates our extrude for that dark gray part. So now let's create a cut to remove some of the geometry from this dark gray part. So we're going to start here on the front plane. We're going to begin a sketch, S key, begin a sketch, N key to get normal 2. And we're going to create a circle, S key, circle, and we're going to create a circle right here at this point, the same point that's the max height of the gray part. Single click, move your mouse, and you're going to single click again. And let's make that diameter 155, 155, enter. Oh yeah, nice and fully constrained. And then let's also include this circle right here. So I'm going to hit escape, and then I'm going to pick this circle right here, and I'm going to choose use/project convert. And what that does is it traces that circle into the current sketch. And now what we'll see is when we jump into the extrude command, extrude, that circle, that inner circle is now part of the contour that's being extruded. It's like we clicked on that circle from the layout sketch and we traced it into the current sketch. Now for this extrude, we're going to say remove. We want to remove the geometry. We're going to make the end type through all. And then let's click this little black arrow here to reverse direction so we can see what's going on with that extrusion. So that's pretty nice. We're cutting away this area down here for that link. And then we are also including this pin region here. Maybe that'll be part of the 3D printed part. I don't know, that might be a little bit flimsy for a 3D printed pin, but we're just going to go with it for today's example. So we're going to hit the green check mark, and there we go. We've created that dark gray part. Now for the dark blue link shape part, all we need to do is click inside of this sketch region here and then choose extrude. And you can see that Onshape takes that entire region and turns it into an extrusion. So once again, we're going to click new so that this will be a new part. And we'll see down here in our parts list, now we've got 1, 2, 3 parts in the parts list. And then let's set the depth here to 35 millimeters. 35, enter, and enter. All right, we're moving along pretty fast here with these components. This is the nice thing about making a layout sketch. So next we're going to construct this kind of lighter, almost a white part right here that's going to be the coupling to get us out to the clamp. So let's begin a sketch here on the front plane. So front plane, S key, begin a sketch, N key to get normal 2. And then let's create a circle right here, right at the center of this hole in the link. So S key, circle, single click here at that center, move our mouse, we'll single click again, and let's type in 60 for the diameter of that circle. And now let's create 3 lines. So S key, line, and this first line is going to be horizontal to the center point, and it's going to be right here on the quadrant of the circle. Single click, we move our mouse up. Single click, we move our mouse over. You can kind of come out here, you can overshoot your destination. Single click, and then once again, we're going to wake up the center point so we can be horizontal to the center point and coincident to the circle right at that quadrant point. So single click, and then you can hit escape. And now we can click on this line and press the letter V for vertical. So V, that makes that line vertical. And if you did it correct, then both these lines are black. And then we're going to click on this line here and this point. this point that we created at kind of the top of our construction line, and we're going to press I to make those two coincident. And so now one final element of this sketch is just going to be to click on this arc right here. And once again, we're going to choose Use Project Convert. And there we go. We traced that into the sketch. And so now we're going to begin the extrude command. And we're going to say we want this again to be new. We want this to be a new part. So a new part down here. We're going to reverse the direction of that part, and we're going to make that depth 20 millimeters. So if we roll this around, there we can see what that depth looks like. That's looking pretty good. And so now we're going to hit the green check mark, and we're going to create this area up top here where this post from the clamp can stick down into. So we pick this face here, S key, begin a sketch. We're going to begin a circle. So S key, circle. We'll drop a circle right here, right at this point. Move our mouse, single click, and we'll make that diameter 30, 30. And then we're going to choose extrude, and we're going to reverse the direction for that extrusion, and we'll bring that down to a depth of 30, 30, enter, and there we go. There's our extrusion. And now we're going to create another circle here on this face. So pick this face, S key, begin a sketch, and then S key, circle. And this circle, again, is going to be at this point, but we're not going to type in a diameter for this circle. Instead, we're going to hit escape. We're going to pick this point down here on the layout sketch. We're going to pick the circle, and we're going to press the letter I. And that'll take the circle, and it'll move it over so that the diameter is right on this point right here. And that matches right up with our layout sketch. So now we can choose the extrude command. And this extrude is going to be a remove because we're doing a cut here. And we're going to say that's going to go up to vertex. And the vertex we go up to is going to be this point right here, again, from our layout sketch. That creates a hole that goes right down to that point on the layout sketch. So now we hit the green check mark, and now we're ready to move on to create the clamp geometry. And for this geometry, what we can do is, once again, pick this face here at the bottom of the hole. So you might need to rotate the view to be able to select that face, but pick that face at the bottom of the hole. And now we can jump into the extrude command. So we're making an extrusion directly from that face. And again, this is going to be a new part because now we're making the geometry for the clamp part. And this is going to go up to vertex. So we're going to go up to vertex and go up to this point right here. And so that gives us the geometry of the post for that clamp. We hit the green check mark, and now we finish off the clamp by going into the extrude command, picking this region right here. We'll make that extrude 10 millimeters and enter, and let's make that symmetric and hit the green check mark. And then just to finish this off, just to make it look pretty, let's add a fillet feature. So fillet feature, we'll make this 8 millimeters for the radius, and we'll add these 1, 2, 3, 4 edges to that fillet command. I just think that makes it look a little bit more, just a little bit more pretty. And so we hit the green check mark, and I'm going to press the letter F on my keyboard, which is the shortcut for fit. And that gives us our 5 parts. And now we are ready to add those parts to our Onshape assembly. You can see that down here at the bottom of the screen, it's a little behind the keyboard cam, there's a tab called Assembly 1, and we're going to click on that tab now. Then we're going to choose this command, insert, to insert our parts into this assembly. We're going to click here on the name of the PartStudio. It's just called PartStudio 1. And then we're going to click the green check mark. And what happens is those components are added to the assembly, but they are not locked down at all. You can grab these components and you can just start moving them around. Well, we want to establish one of these components to be the anchor, and that component is going to be the base here. So I'm going to right-click on the base, and I'm going to choose Fix. And when we choose to fix that component can no longer move. So all these other components are free to move around, but that first component cannot move. So I want you to leave that component in place, but move the other 4 components out of their original position. And now we are going to launch the REVOLUTE mate. Now, there's a lot of good information about how to add mates in the Onshape Learning Center. I've also got some videos I made where I talk a lot about different mate types. And because we're running out of time in this tutorial, we're not going to get too in-depth on the way mates work in Onshape. We're just going to focus on this REVOLUTE mate. So we click the REVOLUTE mate, and what happens is when we put our mouse over this edge of the gray part, a local XYZ coordinate system is previewed. So So local XYZ coordinate system is previewed. And when we put our mouse over this edge of the light blue part, a local XYZ coordinate system is previewed. So we have this local XYZ coordinate system here. So when I single click on this edge and then I single click on this edge here, the edge that's down in the pocket on that light blue part, Onshape creates a relationship between those two coordinate systems. And in the case of a REVOLUTE mate, what happens is we no longer have translation available in X or Y or Z, but we do have rotation available in Z. So basically with a REVOLUTE mate, the only thing that can happen is that these two coordinate systems can rotate relative to one another along the Z axis. And in the case of this assembly, that's exactly what we want. So if we hit the green check mark, now you can see that this component is free to move completely in a circle, 360 degrees, but it can't move in any other direction. There's no translation and there's no off-axis translation either. Now, we can limit that angle. If I go over here to the tree and I double click on that REVOLUTE mate, there is an option here for limits. So for example, I could set this to a limit of 0 to 90 degrees in that REVOLUTE mate. And now we see when we go to rotate this part, it can only rotate 90 degrees. So experiment with that a little bit. And then what I encourage you to do is just take this first part and maybe double click on that mate and set it to 0 and 0. So that it has no available rotation. So now that those two components are locked together, and now what we're going to do is we're going to assign another mate to our remaining components. So we're going to do a REVOLUTE mate here. And again, this is a very surface level explanation of mates, but for this REVOLUTE mate, we'll pick on this edge of the dark gray part, and then we will pick on this edge of the dark blue part. So there we go, mated those together. And we can, if you hit the green check mark here in this box, then the mate command will stay open and you'll jump into the next mate. So we'll hit this green check mark, jump into the next mate. That one is going to be between this edge of the dark blue part and this edge of the white part. Mate those two together, and we'll hit the green check mark here in this toolbar. And then we're going to choose this edge down here, the bottom edge of the hole, and this edge here, the edge of the clamp. And so those two parts are brought together, and now we can hit the green check mark here in the properties box, and that is it. Now we can see that we have available motion between these components, and we can start to examine whether or not we've got any interferences or any problems with this assembly. And so, for example, when we take this blue part here and we start to move it down, maybe it interferes with this dark gray part. Well, what we could do is go back to the PartStudio, and then we could add a fillet command. So fillet, maybe we'll make this like 15 millimeters here. 15 millimeter fillet, and we can add that fillet command right here on this edge. And we hit the green check mark, and now we go back to the assembly, and oh yeah, that looks a lot better. Or maybe we decide that, in order to get the results that we're hoping for, this gray part needs to be higher or this blue part needs to be longer. So we go back to the PartStudio, we go up to Sketch 1, we double click on Sketch 1. We could change this distance here from 120 to 180. That should make that gray part a little bit taller. Let's go back to the assembly here. Oh yeah, that looks better. And we could go back to the PartStudio, double click on Sketch 1, and we can change this 80 dimension here to 150 to make that blue part a little bit longer, that link part a little bit longer. And so we go back to the assembly, and yep, that's what we needed because we need to have more range for this robot arm. And so that brings us up to our 20 minutes. I think we went maybe just a few minutes beyond, but that brings us up to the end of our 20-minute tutorial on how to go from a napkin sketch to your first virtual prototype of this component. Now, if you were going to bring this into the real world and you were going to turn this into a 3D printed assembly, you would have to account for a little bit of clearance on some of these components. So one of my favorite commands to use in Onshape in that scenario is the move face command. So if I zoom in here on this pin, it's at 1-to-1 inside of the hole. Well, I could use this command here. Let's see, where is it? Here it is, move face. could use this command here, move face, and then I could set this to offset and click on this face here. And so we're going to offset that to the inside, and maybe we'll just offset it by 1 millimeter or maybe even smaller, like a 0.5 millimeter. And we can click the green check mark, and now we've got some clearance there between those parts. So you'd have the same issue up here. Maybe you'd have to go to this face here, and you'd do a move face, click on this face here, and offset that by 0.5 millimeter, and offset that to the inside so you have a little bit of clearance. So if you are planning on creating a design like this and turning it into a 3D print, just remember you're going to have clearance issues. Same thing down here. You're going to have a clearance issue between these two components, and make sure that you use move face to create those offsets. So that's your little bonus tip to make these extra couple of minutes worth it. And if you enjoyed this step-by-step tutorial, be sure to hit the like button on this video. Be sure to let us know down in the comments what you thought about this tutorial, and be sure to subscribe to the channel, and I'll look forward to seeing you in the next Onshape step-by-step tutorial.